All right, the Sunday slate games are done. We do have Monday Night Football left with the Packers and the Raiders. Hopefully, you got the win in Week 5. If not, hopefully you can get that extra oomph for some players that you may have on Monday Night Football. As always, I'm going to be bringing you my top 10 waiver wire pickups coming in to Week 6. I'm going to be bringing you over 15 players this week, actually, but I'll give you my top 10 and also some players that should already be rostered. And let's get straight into that. Actually, I'm going to bring you a list. You can probably see it on your screen. These are some players that I want to say, hey, these guys should already be on your team. If they are not on the team and still on waiver wires, then I think these guys should be prioritized to be picked up, maybe even ahead of some of the guys that I am going to be talking about here today. But of course, Quentin Johnson coming off that bye week, there are going to be some great opportunities for Quentin as he grows into this role now that Mike Williams, is out for the season. Josh Reynolds just had a good game. Obviously, that is with the Monrock out and then JMO in some snap count type affair, which was, I thought, a bit upsetting in my personal opinion. But hey, if he can kind of continue this, he can be a good flex-in option depending on if you are struggling at the wide receiver position. Rashee Rice, somebody that I said could have a smash week this week, and he actually put up a decent amount of fantasy points coming in to Week 5. Obviously, Travis Kelce on a short week could miss some time. Maybe Rashee Rice could find the end zone again. May not be a crazy boom game, but somebody that could be a good flex option moving forward. Tajay Spears, we keep seeing the workload, him getting in the air, of course, and he did find the end zone this past week, which is really good. So Tajay Spears should definitely be picked up. Kendre Miller, obviously Alvin Kamara is back. He is clearly the lead back, but if Alvin Kamara does go down or miss some time here, Kendre Miller, as we saw with that big open run that he had this past week in Week 5, he could definitely be picked up and say maybe started if Alvin Kamara does miss some time. And last but not least on this list is a tight end, Dalton Schultz, somebody that we keep seeing improve week in and week out here. We see Nico, we see Tank Dell, now we see Dalton Schultz finally, and he should definitely be rostered if you are struggling at the tight end position. So hopefully that helps. All these guys should already be rostered coming into Week 6. Before I even get to my top list, reminder, Packers and Steelers are on a bye week going into Week 5. So obviously you have some quarterbacks, some significant running backs, wide receivers that you're going to be missing coming into this week. So keep that in mind. And my first waiver wire priority that you should be going up and picking up right now, and that is big old Roscoe. Rashawn Johnson, I like to call him Roscoe, available on 63% of ESPN and just under 50% on sleeper leagues. Look, with Khalil Herbert due to miss several weeks with that ankle injury, the ankle sprain, Roscoe's the next man up. Now, granted, he did miss this past game. He left this past game on Thursday night against the Washington Commanders early with a concussion, but since it was technically they have a mini bye, right? They play on Sunday this next week on Week 6, he should definitely be back coming into Week 6. Now, we saw a glimpse of Roscoe and how he could be utilized in the air, specifically Week 1, right? Caught 6 out of 7 targets, scored a touchdown. He had over 17 fantasy points. Didn't really see too much on the ground, but the explosiveness and efficiency that we've seen on the ground has been exciting. Now with Khalil Herbert, once again, missing a significant amount of time, it says several weeks, maybe that's 2 to 4 weeks, depending on until we actually know if it's a high ankle sprain. If I'm not mistaken, it is a high ankle sprain. We haven't heard the severity. Does he go on IR? Does he miss 2 to 3 weeks? Does he miss 4 to 6 weeks? We just don't know as of yet. We may get that answer as the week goes on, but Roscoe is the number one waiver wire priority here. So he's somebody I'm going to be picking up and prioritizing. And if I were you, with the way the running back position is, I'm going to be spending a lot of fab on Khalil Herbert. I would say 25 to 35% of my fab, if you still have enough fab there for you. Obviously, this year and waiver wires have been incredible so far. But if Roscoe can be picked up, he can actually be a league winner depending on how he picks up this offense and how he can command this backfield with the way Justin Fields and this offense has been playing, at least the past 2 games, even though they lost in Week 4. So he's my first waiver wire priority. Go pick up Roscoe if you can. Going into my second player at the wide receiver position, Curtis Samuel, available in 85% of ESPN and just over 70% of sleeper leagues. Okay, Samuel is annoying. Zach likes to call him the biggest cock block, and it's so true because there are tremendous talented more people on this team, like a Jahan Dotson, like a Terry McLaurin, and we just haven't seen that these past 5 games for those guys. Terry, yes, but someone like we all believed in coming into this year, like a Jahan Dotson. I'm pretty sure you drafted Jahan Dotson, and he has been living up to expectation. And that's exactly what I want to bring to you guys here today. I have a little graphic on the screen here. You can see where I broke down Samuel, Terry, and Jahan Dotson receptions, targets, and their wide receiver finish so far in the 5 games. How upsetting is this? Curtis Samuel, just over 4 receptions, so he's about averaging 5 receptions per game. Terry, 5 receptions per game. Jahan Dotson, 3 receptions per game. And then targets, 5 receptions for Samuel, 6 for Terry, 6 for Jahan. He's getting the targets, just not connecting with Sam Howell the way we hoped and intended him to connect with coming into this season. Look at the wide receiver finishes. He is currently the 2nd wide receiver on this team. Top 20 wide receiver finish currently so far. If the season were to end today, he will be wide receiver 16. And look how significantly low Jahan Dotson is. Wide receiver 60. That is more than double, more than triple than what we hope and expect for Jahan Dotson at this moment. It's crazy to say, but Curtis Samuel is the wide receiver, the 2nd wide receiver that you want on this team, even though Jahan Dotson, I think we can all agree, is the more talented wide receiver. But in the fantasy finish, you probably drafted Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel is still on your waiver wires potentially. Go pick him up. He is somebody that you may have to start over Jahan Dotson just because we have been seeing the consistency from him. Look at this. He has scored over 10 fantasy points in 3 out of the 5 games. Week 1, 11 fantasy points. Week 4, 18 fantasy points. This past week on Thursday Night Football, over 18 fantasy points, and he found the end zone. How frustrating is that? But look, he is still available. Once again, available in over 80% of ESPN and just under 80% of sleeper leagues. So if you do, and you do see him on your waiver wires, go pick him up, put a claim in. I'm going to be spending, 15 to 20% of my fab to try and acquire Curtis Samuel if I am struggling at the wide receiver position. So hopefully that helps. That is my 2nd waiver wire priority coming into this week. So let's stay at the wide receiver position. Let's go to the Indianapolis Colts with Josh Downs, available in just under 90% of ESPN leagues and 73% of sleeper leagues. Look, with AR-15 going down, he could miss a couple weeks. And I think this actually helps Josh Downs and his fantasy relevancy, to be completely honest, because you saw him shine with Gardner Minshew. Now, as I'm recording this, I'm not necessarily sure how much time Anthony Richardson is going to be missing. He says the AC joint, I think it can be a 2 to 3 week type of deal. Does he go on IR? We just don't know. We will get more information throughout the week. But if we are going based off of the connection that we've seen with Josh Downs and Gardner Minshew, maybe this is somebody we can start in the flex on a weekly basis. Obviously, depending on matchup and depending on what your squad looks like, right? Let's look at it. Week 3 against Baltimore, when AR went down, Gardner Minshew steps in. He gets 8 out of 12 targets, over 13 fantasy points in week 3 with Gardner Minshew. Obviously, it wasn't all with Gardner Minshew, but that is a great fantasy finish for somebody that we weren't expecting to have a significantly big role early in this season. Then AR goes down again in week 5 against Tennessee. He catches 6 out of 6 with over 15 fantasy points at the end of week 5. Now, once again, that is some good fantasy points for a good flex option for someone that has been getting explosive plays. I mean, this past week, over 16 yards per catch, which is pretty. Those are those big chunk plays that you want to see out of an offense, and that's exactly why we like Gardner Minshew. He is somebody that he's going to be slinging it. That's what you want with Gardner Minshew. That's what's so exciting. And now with Jonathan Taylor coming back, they can get the run game going. They can get the pass game going, specifically with Josh Downs. Obviously, Michael Pittman is going to eat in this offense as well. So I'm going to be picking up Josh Downs. If you are struggling at the wide receiver position, maybe you need a good flex option, or maybe you have a couple bye weeks that are coming up that maybe Josh Downs can fill in. This is all you know, depends on how long Anthony Richardson is going to miss. Not saying I'm not going to pick him up if Anthony Richardson plays next week, but I think I'm going to be switching my priority if Anthony Richardson is 100% going into week 6, which I doubt. All right, let's go into my fourth play here. Let's go back to the Chicago Bears. Yes, I almost got confused saying the Carolina Panthers, but that is Deontay Foreman. Available in 95% of ESPN and 68 of sleeper leagues. And this one's pretty fair and simple, right? With Khalil Herbert going down, Roscoe's the next man up. I did say he was dealing with a concussion, but he should be back. But if he's not, Deontay Foreman is somebody I think regardless should be rostered on your team if he is available on waiver wires. Why? Because I'm not saying Roscoe can't handle this workload. I just don't think they're going to give him the full range right in week 6 right away, right? Deontay Foreman was a healthy scratch in the past 2 games. They were really going in with Rashawn and Khalil Herbert, and I think that's exactly what I'm kind of anticipating. They're going to ease Rashawn into the massive workload, and then maybe once he hits, you know, week 7, week 8, depending on how long Khalil Herbert is going to miss, and then they get the reins to Roscoe, that's when Deontay Foreman can kind of start fading away. But at this moment, if you do need a running back, this could be a good, not a good, but, you know, a good 8 to 12 fantasy points. Maybe he finds the end zone. Maybe this is a 50-50 workload for the next 2 weeks, or a 60-40 workload in favor of a Roscoe, right? Deontay Foreman has handled the workload, and we've seen that this past year when he was with the Carolina Panthers and they traded away CMC. Weeks 7 to 18 last year, over 190 attempts, over 800 yards on the ground, averaging 4.6 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns. He was averaging over 11 fantasy points per game. He was an RB23. You were happy at some weeks where Deontay Foreman was in because he won you weeks. I was somebody that picked up Deontay Foreman and started him in multiple weeks last year. You know, so many other people, we told you guys to pick him up because he was on the waiver wires. That's exactly the same scenario here. He just has different competition in a different offense. So keep that in mind. So Deontay Foreman, my fourth priority coming in. I'll be spending 10 to 15. Really depends on how bad you need a running back. I think that is really relative to your team and your league. So keep that in mind. Let's go to another running back position. My fifth waiver wire priority here. And this was somebody that I told everyone to, hey, if the main running back is not playing, you should start him, okay? And that is Jaleel McLaughlin, okay? Look, a lot of people were telling you that Jaleel wasn't going to be the guy, and I thought that he was a lot more explosive, a lot more exciting than a Samaje Perine coming into this year, or not this year, but excuse me, into this week. And that's exactly what we saw from Jaleel McLaughlin, right? Only carried the ball 9 times, right? 68 yards, over 7 yards per carry, caught 3 out of 4 targets. He found the end zone. He finished as the RB7 this week. And that wasn't even with the full workload. That was still with Samaje Perine getting more snaps on the ground versus Jaleel McLaughlin. He is just the more explosive, the more exciting player, in my personal opinion. When you saw Samaje Perine on the field, that offense wasn't operating the same as with Jaleel. Okay, maybe that's my personal opinion. I'm happy to have a conversation in the comments, but I do believe if Javonte is back, he will be the reliever for Javonte Williams. Now, this is why he is a little bit lower in my priority. But if you are in need of a running back and Javonte is still struggling with this injury, maybe they don't want to rush him back into it, right? He did have a full practice coming in on Saturday or Friday this past week, and then he was still a game time decision and he missed out. What happens is if it's this week again or whatever the case may be, right? I'm more picking him up as a handcuff and saying, if I'm in a really tough position, maybe I can get, you know, once again, 8 to 11 fantasy points coming out of Jaleel, even though he scored over 17 fantasy points this week and over 19 fantasy points the week before. I am not envisioning something big, a big role for Jaleel. I'm thinking of maybe if he can continue his production when he's on the field, his explosiveness when he's on the field, maybe he can turn into not saying that he is nowhere near the talent, but maybe his role can be a Tony Pollard-esque type role when Javonte Williams is back. So once again, not going to spend too much fab, 10 to 15% of my fab. But if you are struggling with running backs, I think you can definitely spend a little bit more if you need to. All right, let's go to the tight end position here. A lot of people are struggling with tight ends. Tight ends have been very up and down, very volatile. Obviously, we all know the tight end position. But what we do know is that Logan Thomas is a favorite in his offense. And he is my 6th waiver wire priority, available in 91% of ESPN and 80% of sleeper leagues. Look, caught 9 out of 11 targets this past game and a touchdown, over 20 fantasy points. You know, Zach is a Washington Commanders fan, and he said, look at that Eric Bieniemy offense and how he loves to target the tight end position. Was that Eric Bieniemy targeting the tight end position over there in Kansas City, or was it Andy Reid? I think it could be Eric Bieniemy with the way Logan Thomas has been performing these past couple weeks. Tight end 7 on the year currently. And if you are in need of a tight end, like for example, I said someone like a Dalton Schultz should be rostered. That could be a good week-to-week conversation of who I should be starting, Logan Thomas or Dalton Schultz. Logan Thomas or a Kyle Pitts. I mean, that's the type of conversations we are going to be having, and we are having here week in and week out, because the tight end position is so up and down. You know, Logan Thomas, Zach Ertz, Logan Thomas, David Njoku. That is the type of conversation, once again, we are having coming into this week. So if you are struggling at the tight end position, not going to spend a significant amount of fab, maybe 5 to 10% of my fab, go out and pick up Logan Thomas if you are in need of a tight end. All right. Going to my 7th waiver wire priority here, the quarterback. This is more catered to super flex leagues, or maybe if you just need a high upside play. Okay, Gardner Minshew, obviously with Anthony Richardson potentially missing time. Once again, I said it earlier in the video, we don't know how much time he's going to miss, but what we do know, it's an AC joint that can be from 2, 4, 6, however long. Right, he can go on AR, and which means IR, which means that Gardner Minshew can play up to at least 4 games if you are in a super flex leagues, and maybe you are struggling at the quarterback position. We've seen a couple quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones go down this past week, and we don't know the severity of their injury. Gardner Minshew, what we do know, he loves to sling the ball. We haven't seen him in a full game so far this year, which means that his ceiling is probably even higher than what we're seeing. I think the last game against Baltimore, he had, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was, I can actually pull it up right here for you guys. I think he had about over 17 fantasy points when they played. Yeah, so here we go. Gardner Minshew here. It was actually over 14 fantasy points for Baltimore, and that was only in the second half of the game. So if he plays a full slate game, that can actually be really exciting. Maybe that's double, right? Maybe whatever that. He threw the ball 44 times. If I'm not mistaken, he played, I think, 3.5 quarters or 2 quarters of the game in week 3. So that is something really interesting to watch out for if you do need a quarterback. Gardner Minshew, somebody that you can pick up if you are in a super flex league. All right, going to another waiver wire priority, my next wide receiver here. This is all dependent on how Justin Jefferson is going to be, and I think this one's pretty obvious. KJ Osborne, right? We've seen KJ Osborne shine. Sometimes we get frustrated when we don't see Jordan Addison get the workload that we hope and expect. We saw how this team eliminated TJ Hawkinson. The run game is kind of non-existent. Now, if Justin Jefferson is out with a hamstring for however long, once again, recording this before I actually know all that information, we can actually reprioritize this order once we know. It says, hey, he's going to miss a couple weeks, or maybe he won't even miss any weeks. Then maybe KJ Osborne shouldn't be on the list. So keep that in mind. But what we did see, caught 5 out of 9 targets, over 9 fantasy points. But what we do see as well, he caught 2 touchdowns in the last 2 out of 5 games that he has played, which has been great if you have been I doubt anyone has been starting him, but has been great if you need a flex option. Now with Justin Jefferson leading a significant amount of targets behind and fantasy points, Kirk Cousins is going to have to lean on somebody, and they don't have that depth at that wide receiver position, because if Justin Jefferson goes down, you have Jordan Addison and then KJ Osborne and then TJ Hawkinson. There's no one else really there. I mean, go to Jalen Nailor. Shout out to Jalen Nailor. But look, that is exactly who I'll be picking up here as my 8th waiver wire priority. Once again, he can even go higher depending on what happens with Justin Jefferson. Going to my 9th priority here. Hopefully I don't butcher his name. Amir DeMarcado. Okay, these are two guys I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and also Keontae Ingram. Okay, because James Conner did go down. He didn't come back into the game. Has some sort of knee injury. We don't know the severity of it yet as well. But this is somebody that we need to understand what's going to be happening. Both of these guys are available in 99% in ESPN and sleeper leagues. But what we saw from Amari, he carried the ball 10 times, had 45 yards, caught 1 out of 3 targets. He also found the end zone, had over 12 fantasy points. Now, Keontae Ingram was, sitting out. He was a healthy scratch. But who is going to be leading the backfield when James Conner is out, right? If he's out going into next week where they play the Los Angeles Rams, right? Is it going to be Keontae Ingram or Amari, right? I'm not necessarily sure. So that's why I need to keep an eye out on your waiver wires, because I don't think maybe a lot of people are going to pick up either of these guys because we don't know the severity of James Conner. But if you can spend 5 fab, 0 to none fab, and pick both of these guys up, and James Conner misses some time, and they're saying, hey, Keontae didn't get the workload, that's exactly what you want to do coming into this week. So hopefully that is helpful. All right, my last waiver wire priority coming into this week here, and that is Justice Hill. This one may not be exciting. I think a lot of people kind of already know, but look, something that I really want to recap with you guys here. Even though Justice Hill is not exciting, he's still available in a lot of ESPN leagues, over 86% of ESPN leagues and 68 of sleeper leagues. Let me tell you the kind of workload he was getting, right? Carried the ball 7 times for 32 yards, caught 4 out of 4 targets, and found the end zone, had over 12 fantasy points. But what is interesting to me is the snaps and the route runs that he's gotten. He didn't get more carries than Gus Edwards, but has been on the field, was on the field more, and had more opportunities than Gus Edwards. And I don't think Gus Edwards looks the same. He's not as explosive. He's not hitting the hole as hard. Justice Hill looks more explosive, in my personal opinion. That was a game that I was watching in full. A guy that was getting the ball in opportunities. He did fumble once, for sure, which really hindered his upside in that game as well, because they took him out for a couple drives, and the Gus Edwards has a lot more carries. But you saw Justice Hill, carrying the load, and it felt significantly better than Gus Edwards. So that will be my last waiver wire priority coming into this week. Hopefully that is helpful, guys. Those are my 10 waiver wire priority lists, and also I gave you my honorable mentions, guys that have already been rostered. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, comments, concerns in the comments as well. We go live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single week to answer your start sit questions. Hopefully you are doing all right. Hopefully you're not, 1-5 or whatever the case may be. Anything can happen. There's still a lot of fantasy football to be played. Flockfantasy.com/land, the best place to support what Zach and I are doing here. Zach is releasing over 300 players that you should be starting and sitting weekly. He is ranking each and every player in every position, even defenses. So go to flockfantasy.com/land, the best place to support what we are doing here, guys. And as always, good luck on Monday night, and it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.